Hey everybody, this is Jason Kistler with Sapphire Leadership Advisors, coming to you with the top 10 challenges that most engineers will face when becoming new managers. Right now. Thanks everybody for watching, and before we get started with the list, I would encourage you to go ahead and click that like button, and better yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We have lots of information on leadership and management for IT professionals, engineers. Frankly, any manager can use a little bit of help these days. So let's go ahead and get right into the list. Number 1, trying to do it all yourself. This problem actually plagues many new managers. It's understandable that you worked really hard to get to the point where you're being promoted into management. So you're used to doing everything on your own. You're used to contributing. And now your role is changing. You're no longer a contributor, you're managing the contributors. And that being said, it's important to understand that there is a distinction now that you need to be aware of doing the work versus managing those who do the work. This is a difficult transition a lot of times because most people are not used to and not easy allowing other people to move things forward that they are ultimately responsible for. So as a manager, you're responsible for a certain level of output, and now you're no longer able to move that needle forward without motivating other people to do it. Number 2 is expecting perfection. We all like for things to be done correctly. But the idea that if you want it done right, you'll have to do it yourself is not going to serve you anymore. Now, at this point in time, it may be true because the reason that you were promoted is most likely because you demonstrated the best skill and ability at what you do. So it would make sense that you're going to be one of the top performers in your team. But now it is your job to bring everybody else up to your level. A lot of new managers will take their former work experience, their level of skill, and apply it to their team and expect that they should be performing at that same level. And until you make that happen by coaching your team, by training, then it's unreasonable to have that expectation. So you're kind of looking for that perfection that's not going to be there. Number 3 is not building relationships with your team. Now, as an engineer, a lot of times it's very easy to isolate yourself, to dig into, engineering type work and ignore building relationships. And as an individual contributor, maybe you were able to do that and it was okay at that point, but now you're in management and you have to build relationships in order to have a successful team. Too often in the IT realm or in engineering, this step is overlooked. A lot of times new engineers will dictate from afar, essentially, via emails, phone calls, or some other relatively impersonal method of communication. And a successful manager needs to be able to interact with their team. And if it's remote, it's got to be more visual, like video conferencing and whatnot. Otherwise, your team may end up seeing nothing more than just a set of instructions that regularly comes down through the email system, and they have no loyalty. They have no motivation to really push themselves. Number 4, not respecting work-life boundaries for your team or even yourself. A lot of engineers truly love what they do. I mean, that's one of the things with the engineering profession is that the individuals that work in it are so driven because they literally love what they do. They do it on their own free time a lot of times. So it's important when you transition from a contributor to a manager that you understand that sometimes engineers aren't that way. Not everyone is totally driven to work 12, 14 hours a day. So there has to be that balance that you need to respect both for your team. So that means no random calls outside of work hours just to ask questions that could certainly wait until the next day just because you don't appreciate or honor schedules because you may be working. Maybe you're doing something at 7 or 8 at night and you all of a sudden have a question for someone on your team. That's not respecting the work-life boundaries. But you also have to do that for yourself. You should be asking yourself, why are you working at 7 or 8 o'clock? Should you be spending time with your family, or possibly spending time unwinding, recuperating, whatever it is? So, and this is a big issue when engineers first move into a new management position. They struggle with this a lot. Number 5 is shiny object syndrome. And this one is very common for engineers who are in charge of, when they get promoted to management, now they're in charge of procuring hardware, or they're in charge of a product or servers or some sort of IT equipment. You know, now it's in their domain to maintain it, to purchase new equipment, or to maintain a product, something along those lines. And what happens here is you have to learn to balance practical with cutting edge. So sometimes the newest things are not the most stable things, and IT departments require stability. Now, we all know a lot of engineers love their toys, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with a professional environment, a business, you have to be very particular about how you spend the money that you're now in charge of. So whereas you may not have a problem shelling out a couple $100s for something new that interests you, but then maybe a couple of months later you lose interest and now you're on to the next thing. That kind of thinking is not going to work when you're in charge of a budget that you've got to make last, and you've got to consider that every purchase that you make, every dollar that you spend, really has to be something that's you're going to get value out of for a long time. Number 6, expecting everyone's equal love of technology. With engineers, usually there is a very strong love for technology. It goes with the territory most times. However, as a manager, it's important to consider that you have to manage your entire team, and it's not fair to assume that every single member of your engineering team has that affinity for technology that you would expect. It's very likely that there are going to be a few people on your team that just see technology as a means to an end, as a way to get the job done, and they have no particular love or hate for it. It's just an additional tool. Sometimes this can create an uncomfortable disconnect between the expectations of the manager and how the individual employees behave and how they contribute their work. Number 7, not having patience. Patience is important for any manager, honestly, but when you come from the engineering sector and you're being moved into a people position, which is what management is, then a lot of times engineers have some difficulty with adjusting the soft skills that are necessary for that. One of them being patience. Patience is a learned skill. Some people have more of it in reserve than others, but it is something that can be learned. And having patience doesn't just mean not getting angry or yelling. It also means not rolling your eyes when someone's giving a very long-winded description of something. When you're more matter of fact, you want the direct details, no extraneous information, and they tell a story. Some people communicate in stories, some people communicate in bullet points. A lot of engineers prefer the bullet point communication. Just give me the data, that's all I need. I don't need the extra fluff, I just want the facts. But a lot of people feel more comfortable communicating in story form. So this is just one example of how patience is not just a matter of not being angry and not yelling at your employees, but also not showing indifference or uninterest when maybe there's a different communication style in play. Number 8, not understanding their emotions. Emotional intelligence is a critical skill for any manager to have. It is even more important when an engineer becomes a manager to understand that skill and its importance. A lot of times with engineers, especially some of the younger engineers that are moving into new management positions, they don't understand their emotions or how their emotions are perceived by others around them. Now, sometimes this lack of understanding of one's emotions can lead to miscommunication, misinterpreted expectations. There's a lot of issues that can revolve around not being able to either understand or control your emotions and how you show your emotions to other people. And then in management, it's equally as important to understand how other people's emotions play into the team dynamic. Number 9, not willing to play the game. When you move into a management position, a lot of your job is how you get things done through other people. Now, on a primary level, this relates to how you get work done through your team, motivating them, training them, etc. But it also means how do you get things done through other people that are your colleagues or maybe your boss? How do you motivate them to do something that you want? A lot of new engineering managers don't focus on this networking that is so important in order to get things done through other people. And a lot of them will look at it as disingenuous, like you're brown-nosing or something like that. But if spending a little bit of time getting to know people in other departments assists you in more efficiently getting your own work done, then it's not brown-nosing or kissing up to somebody. It's actual networking and management. And number 10 is not willing to spend the time building up relationships with your colleagues and other executives. Networking truly is such an important part of being a manager and especially moving into executive positions. Being able to get feedback from other managers, from other executives, from other colleagues, maybe people in the industry that are in a different company. It's important to establish these relationships, and a lot of times new engineering managers don't consider these things when they start. And so they're at a strong disadvantage to an engineering manager who does take that time to manage their relationships with other people, with other vendors maybe, with other executives in the company. Maybe you're not necessarily an executive yet, but it would not hurt for a new engineering manager to make their name known to executives of the company. So those are my top 10 challenges for new engineers that become managers. What would you add to this list? Go ahead and make a comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you.